All right. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? No? Still nothing? Nothing? Can you hear me now? Nothing? Nothing? No? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me, Dalposa? Looks like it should be working now. Come be watching. Hey, if you're watching, please let me know. Can you hear me? Uh, got one. Okay. All right. Hey, if you're watching, you can hear me. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. We finally got it working. All right. So now we're going to talk about the um, Big 12 playoff scenario. What's the best way, easiest way for OU to make it to the Big 12 championship next weekend? Well, obvious answer is if OSU and Kansas State both lose, then and OU wins, then OU's in. Texas is in. And in that scenario too, if Texas was to lose, OU would actually be the number 1 seed and Texas would be the number 2 because OU beat them head to head and they both would have the same conference record. All right? So, um now OSU just losing period and OU winning puts OU in the Big 12 championship. Let me see here. Yeah, we're going to get to that in just a second. All right. So there's 3 scenarios I got up here. I already just talked about, I didn't talk about one of them yet, but I just talked about the easiest way OU or OSU and Kansas State losing, OU winning. There is no tiebreaker scenario. OU's in there, Texas is in there. And then, depending on what Texas did on who would get the number 1 seed or number 2 seed. Now let's talk about the multiple team tiebreaker scenarios. Okay. If Texas loses today or tonight and OSU, OU, and Kansas State all win this weekend, then it would be a 4-way tie. They both, all 4 finished 7-2 in the conference. We got to bring in the tiebreakers situation to see who would play for the Big 12 title. Now, like last week, I'm going to read what the tiebreaker rules are or scenarios are to help. So then we'll go over the situations one by one. All right. So in tiebreaker rules, in the event of a tie between more than 2 teams, the following procedures will be used. After one team has an advantage and is seeded, all remaining teams in the multiple team tiebreaker will repeat the multiple team tie-breaking procedure. If at any point the multiple team tie is reduced to 2 teams, the 2 team tie-breaking procedures will be applied. All right. Um, Step 1, head-to-head best cumulative winning percentage in the game among tied teams. Now, this last part was in the tie-breaking rules until last week. If every team tied, if every tied team has not played each other, go to step 2. Now, that last part, it said go to step 2 if every team tied has not played each other. But remember, the Big 12 decided to put an amendment to that. And they put if all the tied teams are not common opponents, the tied team that defeated each of the other tied teams earns the championship berth. Okay? So, in other words, if there is a tie, if between three teams and one team has played the other two, and then the other two didn't play each other, well, that one team, if that one team beat both the other teams, regardless of them all not playing each other where it said to go to step two, they'll just award that one team the spot in the playoff, which is unfair uh, across the board. Step two, record against the next higher placed common opponent in the standings, conference record. Okay. Step three, winning percentage against all common conference opponents must be common among all teams involved in the tie. Step four, combine winning percentage in conference games of conference opponents. In other words, the conference strength of schedule. Step five, total number of wins in a 12-game season. Now, that step does not include just the conference record, it is all your overall record through the whole season. Step six, the highest ranked team. And then if there is a step seven, it is a coin toss. Okay. So in our scenario, step one says head-to-head best cumulative winning percentage in games among tied teams. Now, this scenario is if Texas, OSU, OU, and Kansas State all finish 7-2 after this weekend. All right. Now, not all teams played each other, and there isn't a team in those four teams that beat the other three teams. There's not one. So Texas didn't play OSU. Texas and OSU didn't play each other. OU and Kansas State didn't play each other. And so there's no way of beating the other three teams. None of them had a chance to do that. So we got to go to step two. Step two, record against the next higher placed common opponent in the conference standings. And that team is Iowa State. Okay. Iowa State is the highest ranked team that is not one of those four that's a common opponent. Okay. And so let's see what happened. Texas beat Iowa State. OU beat Iowa State. OSU lost to Iowa State, and Kansas State and Iowa State play today, but we're assuming that Kansas State wins today, so we're giving the W to Kansas State. So that would right there eliminate OSU from this scenario. You got three teams moving on. All right, it would eliminate in the first seeding. I'll put it that way. Okay. Now, step three. Step three says winning percentage against all common conference opponents must be common among all teams involved in the tie. All right. Well, there's three teams that Texas, OU, and Kansas State all played, and that's TCU, Kansas, and Iowa State. Well, Texas beat all three of them. Okay. Again, Texas is playing TCU today, but for our scenario, we're giving OU the win. So they would finish with a 2-1 record. They lost to Kansas. And then Kansas State beat all three also. So now OU is out. So we got Texas and Kansas State left, which can bring in the head-to-head, except for and they did play each other, and Texas beat Kansas State. So Texas gets the number 1 seed. So now we're going back to OSU, OU, and Kansas State. All right. Back to step one. Head to head, best cumulative winning percentage in games among tied teams. Remember the amendment. If all the tied teams are not common opponents, the tied team that defeated each of the other tied teams earns the championship berth. Between OSU, OU, and Kansas State, OSU beat OU and beat Kansas State. So they would, under that, because of that amendment, OSU would get the second seed in this scenario. So Texas and OSU would play in the Big 12 championship. All right. Now, let's say Texas wins tonight and OSU, OU, and Kansas State finish at 7-2. Again, just what we just went over, it would be Texas and OSU, right? So far, Texas and OSU. Now, let's say OSU loses today and Texas and and well, if it's OU and Kansas State, we'll say Texas is 8-1, OU and Kansas State are 7-2. All right. So Texas automatically in. OU and Kansas State did not play each other, so we can't go to head to head. So let's go to step 2. Record against the next higher placed common opponent in the standings. Well, they both played Texas. Okay. OU beat Texas. Kansas State lost to Texas. So OU would get in. All right. Now, let's say that Texas loses today and still OU and Kansas State win. We have a three-way tie. So let's go over that. Now in that three-way tie, Texas played OU and Kansas State, finished 1-1. OU finished 1-0 because they did not play Kansas State but beat Texas, and Kansas State would be 0-1 because they lost to Texas but didn't play OU. So you got to go to step 2. Step 2, record against the next higher placed common opponent in the standings. Well, because Texas didn't play OSU, it can't be OSU. So that means it's Iowa State. All right. And going back up here, Texas beat Iowa State. OU beat Iowa State, and Kansas State. Again, we're going off tonight's game, would beat Iowa State. So let's go to the next step. Winning percentage against all common conference opponents must be common among all teams involved in the tie. All right. So we got, again, TCU, Kansas, and Iowa State. Again, we can't place OSU in there because Texas didn't play OSU. So Texas and Kansas State both went 3-0. OU went 2-1. So now it's for the 1 seed, it's Texas and Kansas State. All right. They didn't play each other, so it's no head to head. So we're moving to step 4. Step 4, combined winning percentage in conference games of conference opponents or the strength of schedule. Now, there's no definite way to say right this second because we don't know what's going to happen this weekend. But we're just going to assume that Texas will win right there. All right. But we can say it's a tie. Then it's total, going to the next step is total number of wins in the Big 12, or I'm sorry, 12-game season. Well, even with a loss, which would make them a tie, Texas would have that better winning. So Texas gets the number right there. Then you got to but remember, what's it say? All remaining teams in the multiple team tiebreaker will repeat the multiple team tie-breaking procedure. So you got to start all over. Now, so it's not automatic. The Kansas State gets the number 2. You got to start all over and go between OU and Kansas State. Now, they didn't play each other, so you don't go to the head-to-head. Go back up here. record against the next higher placed common opponent in the standings. Again, it's Texas, which we went over earlier. OU beat Texas. Kansas State lost to Texas. So that would put Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship. So the simplest way to say this: OSU loses tomorrow and OU wins today. OU is in the Big 12 championship. There's not a scenario that can put them out of it. Texas, like I said, is pretty much in. The only way they may not be able to get in would be if, like right there on this last step, is if it ended up being Kansas State had a higher strength of schedule in the conference and put them as the number 1 seed, then Texas would be left out because it goes to head then, right, between OU and Texas, and OU beat Texas, so OU would be in, right? So that's the only way, and that may be why they're not 100% locked up. That may be why they're not 100% locked up right now, is that scenario right there. All right, I appreciate everybody calling in today. If you have any, if you have anything you'd like to talk about, we got about 10 minutes before we get off of here. Anything you would like to talk, say anything, questions you'd like to ask, please drop them in the comments. If you haven't already, also please take the time to go to YouTube and like, subscribe the page, and ring the bell. That way you get notified every time Old Man Nate drops a video or goes live. You can also go over to oldmancoffee.shop and get you some t-shirts. We've also got some tumblers you can see right here. And of course, we have some coffee. We have different, look, there's some French toast. We have 47 different flavors of coffee. I'm just going to show you a few we have going on right now. A breakfast blend, so yeah. Go on over to oldmancoffee.shop and get you some coffee and get you a tumbler to drop the coffee or drink the coffee in. And you can also support Old Man Nate by getting you a t-shirt. All right. So it's almost time. It's almost game time. Tell me in the comments what y'all's prediction on who you think what the final score will be today. I think the Sooners win. I think Jackson Arnold has a great day. I think the Sooners get about 45 points on TCU and win about 45-21. That's my prediction. Tell me if you think I'm crazy. Tell me your thoughts on what you think. Also, we are going to have a great show Monday night as Old Man Nate's going to release his college football playoff predictions. And it's going to be a show you don't want to miss. The graphics are going to be outstanding on this. We've been working on studying some stuff, and it's going to look great. So check it out. Also, next Sunday morning, early, we are going to release our playoff predictions. Okay, the top 25. I mean, because next Sunday is when the playoffs will be revealed. And on ESPN, we will do our show right before they're revealed, and then we will probably stay on as they come out and discuss on how right or wrong I was, how if the committee got it right. It could get really, really crazy. It's a good thing it's going to 12 teams starting next year. I really wish it was 12 teams this year because there's about 8 teams that still have a shot at making the playoffs. And there really could be about four or 5 teams that are going to be upset that they didn't get in and probably deserve a shot at it. So 12 teams, and even in that 12 team, 1 or 2 of those teams might have got left out because of how the whole scenario works, right? You got your automatic bids with your conference champions. By the way, your 4 conference champions now, because the Pac-12 don't have an automatic bid anymore. It's the Big 12, the SEC, the ACC, the Big 10, and then you have 2, um, I'm sorry, it's 6 actually, yeah. You have 2 non-Power 5 teams that will get automatic 2 non-Power 5 conferences that will get automatic bids, and then you'll have 5 teams that are at large, right? So it could be crazy even with 12 teams that somebody could be on the outside looking in. And we'll break that down too. We will do something on that too, as what really could happen off this year's team if it was a 12 team playoff. We're going to do that next next Sunday morning. All right. Well, it's about game time, guys. Nobody's leaving any comments. Nobody has any questions. So we're going to go ahead and get off here and get ready for the game. I hope you guys are going to watch the game, enjoy the game, and we'll be back on at halftime. We'll do a halftime show like we have been doing for all season. So, and then we'll do a post game show talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly. But I appreciate you guys watching this morning, and we'll see you again at halftime. All right, Boomer Sooner.